We welcome all of you to our fourth webinar on creative and innovative mindset for workplace success. This is an event organized by the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Quality and Productivity, which is also known as SLAAQP, which has immensely contributed towards the quality and productivity of our nation. SLAAQP is a non-profit organization which comprises of professionals who wish to contribute their time and knowledge to uplift the quality and productivity in our nation through key events like the National Convention of Quality and Productivity, annual 5 days convention, public seminars, and in-house training programs for companies to enhance through innovation and creativity. Therefore, we build competences to promote practice of quality and productivity concepts and techniques to inculcate the quality and productivity culture in Sri Lanka. We are also linked with 13 countries in Asia, and once a year we have a competition among the 13 countries to motivate and to create that quality and productivity culture among the Asian countries. So today, our speaker for the creative and innovative mindset for workplaces, none other than Senior Professor Ajith Alwis. Professor Ajith Alwis is a professor at the Department of Chemical and Process Engineering. He is the director of University of Morotua Kargil's Food Process Development Incubator. He is the science team leader for Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology, SINTEC, and former chairman of the National Nanotechnology Committee at NSF, and the project director of Coordinating Secretariat for Science, Technology and Innovation, known as COSTI in Sri Lanka, and many other things where he has been involved. And we believe that he would impart good knowledge and share his thoughts on how a business would have success through creative and innovative mindset. Thank you.
Thank you very much initially for the very kind invitation extended to say or speak on innovation. It's a little challenging topic because two sides to this, creative mindset and the innovative mindset, which I will try to plug in for workplace success. And the scenario is, yes, we are looking at national success through workplace success. So the organizational elements comes into place. So very much thankful for the invitation again. And I think when SLAAQP which started, the QP started, we had absolute quality in mind when Sunil Vijayasinghe spoke on quality. And that's something to be embed ourselves as a foundation. Then we also looked at cleaning ourselves. I mean, like physical as well as mind. So we look at organizing ourselves in the physical space and also the mental space. Today's my opportunity is to push you into reinvent ourselves. I believe that is very important in this crisis time, and with lots of job losses and so on, when people are looking at improvements of the organization or the survivability of the organization through sheer taking jobs away. And we see that that it should not be the norm, though it has become the norm. And how to respond to this situation is perhaps part of this discussion. And I'm not going to go in a theory sense, but hopefully we'll be having an array of examples and some points of things which we can discuss. Like so. Now what I'll do is I will switch off the video and share my screen and take you through some of these ideas, and hopefully we can have a dialogue in moving forward. The nation which does not create new things will not rise. This is something our late poet Kumaratunga Munidasa mentioned even before we gained our independence. So he passed away in 1944. How relevant this sentence is. And if you have looked at this poem that he wrote, it's even more revealing, because the second sentence is, I will request you to go and search up that second sentence. But something that comes to my mind is, in 2018, When Paul Romer got the Economics Nobel Prize, he received it for purely stating this simple sentence. He was pushing for innovation. He was telling the innovation is the one that will add wealth to the economy. So it's very interesting. If Kumaratunga Munidasa was to be, well, instead of just writing one poem, and those days there was no MBAs and things like that, he has stated what is in 2018 was accepted for Nobel Prize in economics. So it's quite interesting to think if it would have structured. Of course, Paul Romer came up with the endogenous growth theory, which embeds innovation at the center, which embeds entrepreneurs and researchers and everybody working towards that contribution, which will lead the economy to growth. So he came up with this theory. And it's very important that we hardly, from an economic sense, discuss this element in all our questions, in all our discussions. And so it's gives me pleasure in saying few things to emphasize this innovation mindset and the creative mindset. There are two words probably in English language, or rather we as human beings from children onwards, two powerful words. The two questions very quickly is like why and why not? Instead of accepting, yes, yes, or no, no, right? So we have asking this question why and asking this question why not. We push ourselves to understand and examine. And also we tend to innovate because we tend to become a creative mind because we are not just accepting things, we are questioning things, we are asking. So these two words have been credited with creating significant transformations in the human society. And just to think that is two words, and there's a lot behind these two words. So important that we have these two in our vocabulary, in our thinking almost all the time. And because that opens up new doors and it opens up new ideas and allows us to go into places, and that's what we need. So that's a kind of an embedded that we need to embed it within us, this practice of questioning. It's also important, if you look back, hope you may remember, hope you are seen in children, but it's in a way strange that Sri Lankan parents usually will be very much taking care of the babies, and they don't want to see pain at all. And you see the child keep falling, and then they cry out and then all sort of things to prevent and support and do things. But the child eventually will rise up and walk. And if that's creativity element, if that persistence in the mindset is not there in that baby, all of us probably would be crawling to this webinar on all fours. Because we have been so protected and asked not to do anything and to take care and so on, we would have stopped the gene of kind of like that evolution or that change, which we are much more used to or should be, but we would have moved away from it. So it's just thinking that organizations in some way should inculcate the baby habit, which is a curiosity, and then to follow on instincts and what's been wired. A person has been wired to walk, to explore, to be curious. And some of these elements in adult life, we are taking away in organizations. So organizations start to crawl while we may just walk. And I bring in this because the topic is about mindsets, whether it's a creative mindset or innovative mindset. And I think we need to understand this word a bit. Mind versus mindset. You have a person with the same skills. You can have a person with knowledge, and that is your thinking pattern can be excellent. And it's almost like understanding the mind. But that same person may have a very, very negative mindset, a very unproductive mindset. So all the skills, the knowledge, and the thinking abilities are actually, in a sense, wasted. So that is why we say it's this creating the mindset. So the individual mindset, the organization mindset, the sector, industry sector mindset, the national mindset. We need to understand the positive abilities if you're having the right mindset, and the need for the right mindset when you push this creativity and innovativeness. So just look at this invention example, right? It's a telling thing. So we have this railway carriage that was designed. And it's very interesting. They put this guard seat on top of the carriage. And you were running the carriage, you were running this railway for many years, around 75 years. The evolution was taking, improvements were taking place. Passengers were going into the carriage while the guard was on top. And not just on top, they were getting themselves killed basically because for the stopping and then toppling and all sorts of things, and they were getting crushed under the wheels. And number of deaths didn't really stop. That was a mindset issue. If you just think back, because we have just graduated to this situation from riding horses. So when you're riding horses, you're on top of the horse. So the design of the railway carriage carried the person on top. And it took some time and about 75 deaths before the guard basically joined the passengers inside. Now, we may think at this stage, crazy. Why didn't we think of it? But unfortunately, sometimes inhibitions, even though the knowledge is there, even though we have been creative, we have still taken in some of the principles or the experiences and just put into that design without giving it a second thought. And even though the evidence was coming, we have been slow to realize. So that's the power of, in a sense, the mindset. If you don't really adjust it, we face trouble. And that's important. Just having one person, the mind having the skills and the knowledge is not sufficient. We must merge. And I want you to just go back, take your memory, and to think. Everyone remembers the date. You probably remember the event. You remember the date on the April 21st, the Sunday. Can any one of you say, or just imagine in your mind, that what was I doing when I first heard this situation taking place? Can you push your memory back and think about that day? What were you doing? Where were you? And so on. I'm pretty sure that most of you will say, I know exactly what I was doing. I know exactly what went through and then the experience. But may I ask you the other question? Can you identify what you're doing on April 20th, the day before? I am sure most of you just cannot. Now, this is coming from the neuroscience, and it's very important for organizations. Our brains are much more stimulated by action. Our brains actually are wired for crisis and events, the action. Because over 10,000 years, we were kind of like flight or fight. Whether the animal is going to kill me or I'm going to kill the animal for my food. So that's been more hardwired into the brains. And it's our brain's same point that measures the pleasure and the pain, right? So this is, in this day and age, we are learning quite a lot in this area. Now that means organizations can benefit, should benefit from a crisis situation. Organizations should not lose their way. That's very important. Making use of this innate ability of us that is present to face a crisis and come out of a crisis and even innovate while at a crisis. That's the direction that we should be pushing. And we should understand this strength of ours as human beings. So today, again, we are in a crisis time. It's also interesting, the year before we were asking all face covers to be removed. And year on, we're asking mandatory face covers. So times change and things dominate. So virus has wreaked havoc in the way we live. So it's very interesting from an organizational point, just to reflect on the word of the Chinese. And they have these two characters for crisis. And probably these days we have heard so much about this word. So the two characters actually reflect one danger, the other opportunity. So Chinese character for crisis just didn't happen yesterday. It's happened many, many years ago. So they have kind of reflect and indicates this danger and opportunity prevailing within that event. that crisis. Yes, now we may be facing danger, but we should not forget the opportunity built in if you handle it right. And that's something we should be thinking about as individuals, as organizations, not just trying to put some more people into more danger by sacking them, get them off the pay list as easy way to make the organization survive. But that will not support you. So we must look at a different way of doing. And it's also interesting to reflect that, as Sun Tzu said in the Art of War, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. So there are a lot of inventions that happen during crisis times, including, interestingly, Newton's theory of gravity. So he was isolated at home during the bubonic plague. So and you can take things like from the basketball to iPods to tea bag. I'm not just thinking of pandemics or the plague, but also think of times of war and even as prisoners. So as prisoners, things happen. The pilots, the exercise scenario came from a prisoner who came out and came up with these whole techniques. So it's interesting when you go into look into these things. Kleenex, the tissues came from the war situation. So if you examine, because necessity is the mother of all inventions. So there's so much, and crisis times actually create necessity. And either we rise or sink. And what should we be doing? We should be rising up to the occasion. And that demonstrates the strength of an individual, organization, etc. And if you cave in, is not a good character. And that applies to both the individuals, again, to the organization, and including the nation. So please be aware that crisis times have really been interesting times for inventions. And let's make a note of it. I need to take a little look at our organizations. Where are we? And I have defined kind of like two scenarios that we see. And we can either discuss this, but I have kind of put it as a sunshine scenario and a sunset scenario. You make hay while the sun shines. So there are a lot of situations like sunshine, enjoy the cash flow, much less reinvestment. We may even forget to pay the taxes. We may not even register our business, what we should be doing. We forget that we are part of the society. We enjoy ourselves. Then the sunset scenario comes. We look at where is the government. Government should help us. And some of them have never paid taxes. And we ask for subsidies. We ask for whoever we turn in to ask for help. And sometimes as a nation also, we have done the same thing. In the sunshine days, we have not invested on capital, what is called productive capital. The capital investments that actually generates more capital. We have gone into consumption or enjoyment. So when sunset comes, even as a nation, we have to look at the outside. So then in that scenario, if the organization has to look at the nation, which has also followed the same principles, we are in double trouble. So we need to understand that this is not what should happen. And if you look at the organizational mindset, and I don't think everybody should wear the hat that I'm placing, but in my mind, most can put on the hat. We are very much trade oriented. We are very much cash flow oriented, and we want profits. We sometimes talk about the Davila to us, but sometimes we have this 3-monthly, the quarterly mindset. So we have to make all the management decisions right, so we don't make many of these decisions that we should be doing. It's almost short-term thinking. Long-term view? No, it's not there. We're not sure about the country, so why we should have it? We should try to get the maximize while we're doing. So we hop from one point to another point. And also we have sometimes creative accounting, how to pay the minimum tax, how to avoid paying. So we have this side of mindset. It doesn't help the nation and no help themselves as organizations. And maybe another point, but this is coming from a joke, but I keep on mentioning to some extent, the reason is that it's worth thinking about it because we are all human beings in this planet. Some of them have gone to the moon, whereas we still have issues crossing the road. So it's this scenario about, okay, when the dead bodies try to look at from various nations, various nationals, and you look at the brains are needed for the studies, and the Sri Lankan brain fetching the highest price. People are wondering why the situation on the ground actually is not demonstrating a creative use of the brain. But of course, after being dead, that is precisely the reason for value, because this resource has not been made use of. It's not a good thing to think about our own selves, but we need to understand. We need to see the joke, but we need to understand what's embedded in that statement. So if you take a business, an organization, that's where we're going to work. That's where we are part of. So there are two main expectations. First one is value creation. And value creation is a creative activity. We must create value from whatever we are doing. And that's a 24/7 maybe an activity. But then of course, if you just create value, not sufficient. Business is not going to be there as a business for a long time. So it's very, very important you have to have the value capture. And this value capture is discipline commercialization. Now here, the two mindsets are embedded. You have to have that creativity mindset in terms of value creation. You have to have the innovation mindset in terms of capture. These are two different ends. And businesses need to have all sorts of people. You just cannot have one type. If you're all creative, they are maybe spending their time all the time thinking, may not be totally useful to the business. Someone else may get benefit from them. And I'll give you an example, an interesting example. So we need a blend. Sometimes we have words like sprinters and milers, right? Those are good in the sprinting or good for the marathon. And marathon people, those on the long run, I mean, they give stability. The sprinters give the agility, the ability to respond to something, an ability to bring in some idea, and then pushing with that. And a good leader need to work on both. So you value your human capital and you nurture these two mindsets. And we as individuals should also be aware of what are our strengths and the strengths that we bring to the organization. That too is important. So how many people, if you just go back, have seen innovation or given innovation as a core competence required by the organizations? Now that's why I started with Munidasa Kumaratunga long before the Harvard Business Schools and so on came up. So Peter Drucker, who we consider as a management guru, said that every organization needs one core competence, innovation. Going to Bill Gates, forget about this whole capital and labor stuff. One factor that's very much important is innovation. And Jack Trout, who wrote about the differentiate or die, was a little bit grounded, but he said you need 10 differentiations to every product or service every 60 days. Now that's a very, very practical statement of Jack Trout. Differentiations means different way of doing whatever you have been doing, and you constantly renew your product or service. So he is a little bit grounded, and he was more is on a what he call incremental innovations. But essentially, this hard message has been lost in most of our organizations. It's so unfortunate. Even within our business schools, innovation is an optional subject or may not be taught at all. And we worry about the financials and all that. So we have too much concentrating on something that's not going to actually develop us into to the heights that we actually require from our organizations. And this is, I would take as an example for the creativity mindset and the innovation mindset, and having an ecosystem in the country that supports such people. And I know most of the time we don't look at this picture and think like that. So I just want to put this different spin to this picture. It's on record, and German historians have written, and we have looked at that, we have taken that. The oldest systematic hospital, the medical system in the world, is from Sri Lanka. It's from Mihimpale. And we have looked at, we have seen evidence presented on surgical instruments. So we may today say Ayurveda and indigenous medicine is not too much with surgery, but we have seen surgical instruments from those ruins. Now, when we say that's the oldest hospital in the world, system in the world, that means the state of the art across the world, not just in Sri Lanka, entire world, the number one. And few people or some people may have thought of how to do this. And just by thinking, you don't get the oldest hospital in the world. It's by doing, you get the oldest hospital in the world. And those people who think may not be the best people for the execution part. And for that, you need the innovation mindset. Somebody somewhere actually converting that idea. So this is a classic example of the earlier Sri Lanka has demonstrated both the creativity mindset and the innovation mindset. The present Sri Lanka is unfortunately displaying almost neither. So we have these examples of COVID in Sri Lanka. We are coming up with lots of inventions. You hear newspapers, you see the TV, you see these lots of things. And if you look back, even during times of Meethotamulla garbage collapse, those days newspapers and TVs were carrying the inventors who were trying to solve the solid waste issue. So what has happened after a few months? So hopefully we should not allow that to happen. So if that to happen, then the crisis have not served that at all. Crisis should take us to a different position. New organizations should emerge, new businesses should emerge to handle the next one better, and you should be different, not following, not going down. So this is why I just want to very quickly highlight the problem that we have. We don't have this innovation mindset, turning an idea into commercialization. These are example of a Sri Lankan inventor, Manju Gunawardena. 3 gold medals right across in Geneva. He is one of the top medalists in Geneva. I think if he win one more, he will have a world record for Geneva. And all these examples, like the quick sugar in urine indicator to a person who is using the urinal, to a disinfecting bulb, or to a situation where you have to check your sanitize your hand, otherwise the door will not open in the restaurant. All these are getting commercialized elsewhere, not in Sri Lanka. And some of the commercialization failed here. When our nanotechnology for scientists came up with a patent, an award-winning patent for slow-release fertilizer for paddy and many other crops, it's still not in Sri Lanka. Indians used it, though we have the right to use. But many years later, this happened in 2010, where we are still talking about how to get the urea across from the harbor to the farmers. And that is in excess, because this was to be a research invention that was reduced it by 40% to 50% urea requirement. Just think about how many billions of rupees that if we potentially have a roadmap for exploitation can save. Another example, this is a student from Ananda whose name is there in asteroid 26441. As a student, he was a winner in US in Intel competition, and his award was for a helmet. And this now is in US. We were not even looking at it, I suppose, and there was this simple transaction between the inventor. It's perfectly fine. If we are not interested, our inventor will go on to do other things as he went in to do other things, right? So this is an example. So asteroid 26441, benefit is lost. We had only protest and Facebook movements for the full face helmet. The smart helmet that Sri Lankan did is used in USA. And it was a low cost helmet as well. Then how many rail crossing accidents we have? Maybe the virus stopped for few, but we may be looking at the normal again. So how many people may have perished for lack of rail gates? If you look at how many inventors are holding patents on rail gates in Sri Lanka, you have to ask the question, why not? We only endure the dead bodies and pain across families and society. So it's a question, it's a big question. We have university inventions. This is the world's second best school impact. It was a very dedicated innovation fair. And then these are three students, one from University of Ruhuna. You can't find these things. We will buy something coming from outside in a computer shop. We have a lot of examples of people dying on what accidents with microsleep. Then we have this excellent, well-researched PhD work from Dr. Ramesh at Javadanapura. You can see the three supervisors there. Very strong one based on Indigenous medicine Ayurveda formula, a toffee. And this has been well researched as much as possible to demonstrate that the drivers like it. You don't get microsleep. And they have really looked at our diet and the time period on which they get this microsleep issue. So all the research publications. It's a very good research. And you have this toffee. And we in fact took it to the parliament and tried to make their interest. But the idea was to get an industry interested. It's still not happened. Yet people may be dying on the streets. We have an average of 8 deaths per day, not during COVID times. Some of them are on microsleep. But we never say the microsleep issue. So again, a failure to commercialize. And we understand the public service sector innovation needed. Individuals we can see this is from procurement, and I have taken example of, you can get straight away about 2% GDP if you get our procurement right. You can see this simple example of a service innovation desperately required. 20 weeks to do something simple. QCBS, quality and cost-based selection. So that's why it's 20 weeks and year has 52 weeks. And that's why Schumacher, in old days, in 1920s, he came up with the word creative destruction, bringing technology to remove the inefficiencies. He understood the inefficiencies are really a handicap in making progress. And we in the 21st century, still, we just believe in on a circular. We don't think of being creative. We don't think of being, sometimes the creativity is there for corruption, but not for a positive output. So if you think these are stopping corruption, you can think twice. What it stops is the right thing happening at the right time and delayed. So people switch off their creativity. People switch off their thinking when it comes to sometimes the public sector. Take another country. So this is practical, as I said. So mindset change, what is required. We have the same people, actually. Our people, when you go there, they perform better. So it's not an individual that's different. It's a system that offers them to prosper, while here we inhibit such thinking. So from the history of the land of opportunity, if you take United States, you can find 1903, the Wright brothers. They are bicycle shop technicians. And they were imagining the flight. And they beat actually a professor from Harvard. Right? So it's interesting. And a few years down the line, this is a commercial enterprise. In 1915, people are bombing each other with planes, the World War I. So just to think about this and take the idea, demonstrate, take it on and run with it and see the benefits, right? We are very slow on that innovation part. Innovation part, I'll come back again. It's the commercialization part. Again, if you take like this Palo Alto Research Center of Xerox, And it's an indicator where Xerox became a failure because they were too successful. Because they were so concentrated on their photocopier business, while their researchers in this research center, they have kept these researchers in one place where the rest of the organization was happily getting cash from this photocopier. But they were developing all these things, technology for personal computers to GUI, laser printer technology, desktop publishing, networking, 3D graphics, what you see is what you get, which later ended up on Microsoft Word, flat panel displays, computer mouse, so you can see how Apple benefited from Park. So story of Park is very interesting. And even today they are operational. And today they are showing lithium batteries, learning from the Stripe toothpaste. So they are active. But American economy benefit, the US economy benefit from such creative thinking. And in this particular case, thinking and the demonstration stopped at the research center, but the visitors who came in to visit the center took the ideas away and transformed them into other organizations. So ideas didn't vanish, though the particular organization, Xerox, is kind of considered as a hallmark for invention failures. So it's interesting. And we have like Mark, who is 36 years of age, followed an idea to the end with 3 other friends. And his net worth today is almost equal to Sri Lankan, like $84 billion. Of course, in our case, when the rupee depreciates, the dollar value, it just goes down, whereas Mark's, it just goes up. So he's one product. And the way of thinking, constantly optimization, constantly innovating on that one service. It's much better to think of Elon Musk. And there's an element that we have to learn. Remember the sunshine scenario. Elon Musk has no real cash. He always says, my cash is in my shares. And he constantly reinvests. And even during COVID time, we saw he putting astronauts from the US soil on a US rocket. Commercial space travel happened during COVID time. He put men into the space shuttle. And that was a giant step forward. He was the one who came with the idea, I need to bring the rockets back to Earth. I can't lose rockets. And that's he came up earlier. So, and he started with PayPal, software. Now his thinking is not software. His Tesla Motors is much more net worth than the major established automakers, right? And he's today looking at the big transportation wonder like Hyperloop. And those events, those exercises of an individual in an organization changes the economy. It's a different mindset. So people follow this type of mindset in that type of economy. It's very important. So a little bit of basics. We have 4 types of products, process, business model innovations, and customer experience. So it's not always science and technology, customer experience. Starbucks came up with the concept of second home because they identified people are very comfortable on tables with circular shape. So away went the rectangles and the square tables and came circular. People don't feel isolated even though you are sitting alone in a circular table. And this was a lesson learned from a psychology research paper published 20 years back. So we have very many ways to innovate. So just think about yourself. I want to be quick, but I want to mention. So just think about yourself. Are you a person who is keen on making things happen? Or are you a person who just watch things happen? You just sit down very relaxed at 6:30 and start watching all the teledramas and burn the CB. Who wonder what happened, and there are people who never know what happened. If the last 3 are the characteristics of our organizational leaders, our organizations are in for trouble. And mostly we have it. As I said, sunshine, we are very happy to get the cash flow. We do a lot of interesting things, but never invest back. Now, if I'm working in a place like this, now you have to look at the plus and the negative too, just to see the opposite. So these are very, very important things in this mindset point. Taking risks are rewarded. Failures are encouraged. You like the challenges offered at work. So you yourself, even you may not be the leader, you are working and you are very happy with that. Remember the brain is very interested in stimulations, and crisis helps the brain. I mean, that's, otherwise you brain get bored. So ideas are invited and respected. Freedom to act. I want to get to work every day. Here we have situations of our students sometimes, the day of joining, they're only looking at the day of retirement. That's why sometimes they leave the private sector and join the public sector. First, they want the public sector job at any cost. When you ask the question why, is usually the what you call the pension. So your first day of the work, you're almost thinking of the last day of the work. You're not interested in working at all. So discussions are commonplace, not the idle chatter, the useless idling chatter, but important discussions, interesting discussions, I would say. Conversational IQ. Progress is celebrated. It's not jealousy at work, it's celebrations at work. And cash is not exactly the king. And most of our organizations just live by cash and die by cash. They only think on cash. So this is the mindsets that you should have in individuals. And if you don't have this, think about how do we change ourselves and how we have to change our organizations, the leadership. So if you think dress for success will give you success, those days are gone. And if you respect that, I think I'll leave that organization. I remember a case when Robin Sharma came to Sri Lanka. There was this big poster at the Battaramulla, near Watersedge, buy this dress to attend this seminar. I mean, if that is, you spend money to erect this billboard and you spend time and energy to go and buy the suit and get the photo opportunity, what Robin Sharma has said is lost on you. So sad. So just understand, always a success comes when you can be creative, not just think how to cheat. If you think how little one can give for $1, making the more of the markup, you're not going to succeed. But you are going to succeed. You keep on thinking, how much more can I give for this $1? Customer satisfaction. So just to be a highlight, if you take an innovation value chain, you have these steps. Thinking to commercialization. An interesting product that you see on the other side, BioClean, is from University of Columbia, which has gone all the way. And company has done, and it's available in the market. We see the advertisement, and ₹1.50 from each sale comes back to the university to do research. Now, definitely our system needs very many of these, and very many of these public-private partnerships. Private sector going to the universities, asking for a product, and then doing. So thinking, ideation, development, proof of concept, prototyping, production, commercialization. So the creativity mindset is more up in the thinking part. The innovation mindset is more up down in the production commercialization part. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot be creative in commercialization. Yes, you are creative in marketing, right? But primarily in this chain, it is the thinking part that you have to work. And I'll just give you this example. And this is a capital we need in an organization. And you have to think, do I have this type of individual? Or am I a leader who supports such individual? Here is an example of a person who came and told the leader, the boss, I have an idea and I'm going to start working on it tomorrow. It won't take a lot of time and it won't cost a lot of money. And I think it's going to work. Just see what's embedded in that sentence. She is not exactly asking the permission. She is saying, I have an idea, I'm going to do this. But also reassuring the boss in a way that is not going to cost you much time. And I have thought through this process, so it won't cost you a lot of money. Even if I fail, it's not going to be a big loss to you. And also demonstrating confidence that I think it's going to work. Now just imagine, this is what Seth was telling. This is the capital we need in our organizations. This is what's called instigation capital. People who are ready to go. The people who are willing to give in or say support for such activity. And if you have this capital in an organization, we have been reading the old economic books. This is not in old economics books. This is what we have in innovation. This is what we have in creativity. And this is what we have in the creative organizations. Instigation capital. People with ideas, people with a passion to venture out and do things. And bosses who are really understood the value of their the people working for them, because they know these people are going to get me to success. And that's what we lack. So it's important to think. So we have to be thinking. We cannot come up with this mantra of this is just the way we do things here. I have my circular, I have my standard operating procedure. No way. Now, I don't mean do completely always new things and ruin the organization, but you have to take calculated risk. So we have to have individuals who are brave enough, stop being normal, which is called non-conformity, and then embrace failures. Success and failures are cousins. They're not two things. And the more the failures you can learn, and successful organizations actually have more failures, but the few successes they have changed the entire organizations. That's what happens when you see this time. But I would like to think, just give an idea. This is kind of my MBA stuff too, but I have kind of put together from reading from outside. Apple is well known. And when you say Apple, you remember one person, Steve Jobs. And he went on putting this sticker, think different, in all the rooms, all the tables. There's another organization called 3M. It is one of the most innovative organizations. But if you ask a question, who is the CEO of 3M? Not many people ever remember. People don't remember Louis Sayers. People don't remember like the CEOs of that place. But people remember the Spencers of 3M. People remember the Arid Fry, and then also the Richard Drews, the workers of 3M. They changed 3M, but 3M supported them. Initially, 3M learned from them. Later on, they think as a DNA of the organization is to support people. So this is a company that started with this just sandpaper, right? Because they were extracting, they went to a mine, trying to extract valuable minerals, but they didn't find, they only had sand. They came up with sandpaper, and Richard Drew came up with this sandpaper. And today's 3M is well known in the COVID times with the N95 mask. And you know, they were never planning N95. This was a failed BRA cup. N95 was a failed BRA cup. But even having multiple apparel organizations in the country, we were not able to emulate the N95 immediately when we were running out of N95s. So that shows the importance of creativity, the importance of a system that was not geared just to serve outside what is required, but have an ability to innovate. So public sector can do happen. We have a perennial transport issue. And this is an example I always take. It's not high tech. It's not high cost. You don't have to be indebted to the world. This is a mayor from Curitiba in Brazil who came up with the most innovative city at the time, considered greenest city in the world at one point. And he came up in a simple, localized solution. And he was a mayor, Jamie Lerner, who was an architect student just out. So he was not a very strong architect, but it also indicates education in these positions is very important. But not education, just not sufficient. You need to have the mindset to do things. Going against what a lot of people have never demonstrated. He demonstrated this very popular city to be the greenest and the most innovative city. And using what was available locally, including the production of buses. So it's an interesting thing in a public or private, with the right systems in mind, we can change. So there are a lot of innovation types. So we may have our strengths in thinking differently. We can't always go for the disruptive or the radical. We may go for frugal innovations, right? It's very interesting. We have to think that I just list them just to say that creativity has so many ways to explore. And having some of these ideas, it may push you to think, okay, I am not thinking like Steve Jobs, but do I need to think like Steve Jobs? I can be creative in so many different ways. And this is an example of this Indian, where the Chinese were searching why my washing machines are getting sold so much in the dry Rajasthan. They sent the salesman to find the Indians were using the washing machine to making glacé. And you can see the YouTube video on this. Now that is what the Harvard Business School later on came up with as YouGuard innovation. Indians have this very serious, and what a better way than watching 3 Idiots. And 3 Idiots has a lot of examples like this being shown. The importance of innovation, not just memorizing, which our education system has been really crippled with, and tuition has been the bane on this. So we need to think differently. And India is a very good example of how the society is changing. You can see this. Indian rupees 5 for an ECG test, 10 rupees for a hemoglobin test. $1 for the breast cancer screening. This $1 breast cancer screening is now reached General Electric, the GE Health. And these are almost, as you can see, 3 young people. And these are what are called inclusive innovation awards that in India they're promoting. They're promoting million school children as innovators, not conventional curriculum-based students. So serendipity is one word Sri Lanka gave to the world in science. And serendipity, but the world has used serendipity while we have suffered. We have only given the word. So serendipity, if you can see again, people with creativity, people with curiosity, remember the baby. People with curiosity being open to the opportunity. So you have so many examples for this type of serendipity. And for that, you need to have your organizations tune in that direction. And 3M is a classic example. If you take Post-it note came from 3M, wasn't serendipity, right? And then you have so many examples. You can see very strong examples like penicillin. So please remember that we have to explore. So just to conclude, so the need of the hour in management, and this includes you and I and everybody and we as workers. I come from public sector. So we need to turn this crisis into a challenge that brings rewards. It's important that we do that. And our management should understand, we should not have the mentality of that sunset model. Beg for the government for crisis grants. Government may have a strategic way of supporting, but you should never take that opportunity, that support as the lifeline. You should have the dialogue with your group. You should not think about how to be chopped, who to be sent away, but get them and then look at what should I be doing, what should we be doing, put everybody's talent and come up with a new business plan. Think of how to come up stronger, not doing what you have been doing, but differently. So I won't go into this example, but let's say the mindset that is required is a growth mindset. What we have are very, very fixed mindsets based on very past theories. And our boards are very weak. We don't have boards with a growth mindset. Yes, they want to generate more cash. They want probably to project themselves as doing, but we don't have very innovative boards. We don't have designers. We don't have the science and technology. And we have always, almost, it will be accounting and legal and so on. That restricts the way, because you have in finance, you have what is called mindset that is not risk averse, right? And that's a principle of in that profession. So everything is possible. We are connected. Passion first. Live to give. Time is now. Attitude of gratitude. These are what are called 7 mindsets. But I will not go into detail. Just remember, fixed to growth mindset change. And I'll stop with this. Challenge yourselves to think differently. Challenge yourself to look at a situation and ask yourself a question. Can I be creative here? You may not be able to exercise what you think, but you may be exercising your mind. When you get into a problem, you may be more creative. And you may bring that creativity to your organizations as a worker, as an employee, as an employer, definitely as a citizen to the nation as well. So ask the question, when was the last time you did something for the first time? We have people who spend their lifetime reading the same circular and following the same circular. And we only go backward with that concept. So thank you again for the request. And I hope I did transfer some understanding to you. Thank you.
So why is it, Professor, with the wealth of knowledge that you and several others exhibit and have within our country, that the system that we have cannot be ever changed because of the politics we have? What have you got to do to come to the tipping point?
Simple answer is we are all guilty probably. We may say things, but we may not probably push ourselves a little harder to make the impact. So I think we are personally guilty as well in that. But the idea is we must have the critical mass. If you are to get always to the tipping point, there's a critical mass necessary. So we have to keep on keep on pushing the boundary. So we try to do in a way possible. We have tried in, as I said, in few examples, we have tried, I mean, if I have to give something on very practical issue, that's what I highlighted, as I said, on that toffee. We took it to the parliament, we distributed the toffee, and papers responded by showing that this is good for the parliamentarians because they fall asleep, and this is the antidote. That was, I mean, that's the kind of direction. That's not the way we want. And a PhD, always we have other things to do, maybe.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. What you say is true. Yeah, but we need to have some kind of catalyst that will break the stranglehold that is not furthering our interest as a country.
Sure, I agree.
Professor Ajith, I thank you for a very interesting presentation, very informative. Just want to check, do you feel that the biggest block, systemic block for us to become innovative, I think you mentioned it, alluded to it in your presentation, is the education system in Sri Lanka? I mean, over the years, and as you said, even the whole tuition system, etc., that rote learning, memorizing learning. So when are we going to fix that? Because I really can't say, and I'm not here talking about university education and tertiary education. I'm really talking at the level from grade 1, where children are asked to ask why and why not. At that level, even within our own. So we are brought up that way. We bring up our children that way. We have been. So where do we really fix that whole system?
Okay, I can say that we have not been irresponsible. We have tried to put in the way we were trying to contribute. I remember, like at Costi, and we were working with Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science. We have come out with a complete proposal. It's a collection of 45 individuals, completely from our system of education, private, public, art, sciences, and so on. We came up with a very radically different system, which is less in theory and rote learning and much more with projects and activities and skill-based and cross-cutting arts and science, this division of arts for arts and science for science, and bio, again within science, bio is for bio and maths is for maths, and even taking that away. And that is there available today as a complete document. What's the investment required is available in the domain, public domain. And hopefully it is currently considered by the task force set up by the HE. And I think this is something that you can share and look at it and also comment on it as public inputs to that scheme. Doesn't say, I'm not saying that scheme is the scheme, but I do understand that was developed with an idea of kind of like addressing the serious problems that we have, and even including business stream at A level, those who want to go into business but doesn't want to go into the universities, where the entrepreneurship stream was identified. So there were like 3 or 4 pillars we identified, from a science to humanities, but humanities understanding science, science understanding humanities, mandatory subjects to be done at a base level. So that's a very creative curricula from grade 1 onwards. There are a lot of education faculty and involved, and so I just can say as one of these 45 members. So we have done our part and put that proposal forward, and it's with the task force currently as well.
Hi. Now, when we were talking about innovations, we usually focus on product innovation, but you touched upon the business innovations, business model innovation, and process innovations as well. So when you talk about a country like Sri Lanka, what kind of social innovations that we need to find or invest on to have ethnic and religious harmony in this country?
Social innovations are very important these days. Has been there now. I think the concept of the social innovation came to light while I starting with the Grameen Bank, when Professor Muhammad Yunus identified that he identified that in a lecture. Actually, he used his own money to give, and then identified within the society how they react to such a grant, and then they really don't want to be indebted, and how the society moves. So now we have, with the digital systems, there are a lot of social innovation that are possible now, even like flexi working, and virus pushed us to work from home, and that can really be extended as a social innovation, because we can continue to do so. We can have this flex time. And we were sort of discussing it for a long time and never really happened. So even for traffic and so on, this is a solution. So social harmony, yes. Again, I think connecting, because in social innovation, you don't carry on this entrepreneurship for profits per se. So there's this big distinction in that. And there are so much of, like, even if you take in education, how do you share the knowledge, right? Serving others very happily with knowledge and giving opportunities. You can bring it because you can identify what somebody else is doing and translate that knowledge. You don't have to think for yourself, but see what's happening elsewhere and bring it. I can see so many examples. Like an example, you can think of creating opportunities for people with the knowledge that's available and with the technologies that are making available, especially in the ICT sector, and transforming their lives. And that's possible. And I think there are a lot of examples to be taken from the current COVID, how people faced the problem and how some people responded as solutions to the society. And I think you should take them on.
Okay, then we will take this time to thank Professor for spending this valuable time of his to give us such a wealth of knowledge. And as I mentioned earlier, and for giving us so many practical examples. Thank you, Professor, for giving this time to us. And I hope that we could do something better in the future to rise up and do something for our nation, for ourselves, and for our organization. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just use that one, inclusive and promoting diversity, important for creativity, because definitely it's many ways of thinking. We speak about ideas. If I believe that I am the only one to come up with ideas, and then I believe in certain amount of superiority of one particular group to have ideas over another group, then that's sad. That's totally mistaken view. So it's important to understand, because the diversity actually creates kind of like a very fertile grounds for creative thinking as well. I think the risk-averse culture, yes, education, because we are so much committed, including the parents, in a sense, to passing the exam and having the certificate and so on. And then we believe the certificate gives us prosperity. And then you start demanding than doing things. Yes, that's why you need that center, because child doesn't come into the world thinking like that. So unfortunately, the system changes the mentality, the whole way of thinking, and unfortunately, we from very useful resource we create some standard output. That's a little quick answer. Surani?
Yes, I want to actually thank all our participants. We have Professor Ayano also from Japan, who has joined our webinar today. And most importantly, I hope that we will not just listen, but we will go and do something so that we can all rise together as a nation. And also, Professor, thank you very much. Keep working with us with SLAAQP. You are one of our advisors. And thank you for spending this time and giving us this opportunity to learn so much of thinking that we need to change in our lives so that we can make our country come out and shine in the nations around us. Thank you so much for today, and good night.
Thank you, Serendipity.